In part one of Plyo, I gave you this story about how the Russians really researched Plyo, and they're the ones to listen to about it, but not everyone seems to agree. Hey, Don.
The Russia story is a total fabrication. It's just an excuse.
Excuse for what, Don? The Americans who won tended to do Plyo the Russian way.
We didn't win because of Russia. We won because we totally outworked the other side.
Yeah, Don. You keep telling yourself that. Preach! Testify! Plyometrics is a lot more political than you might have imagined. If you're wondering why I'm so good with the Russians... Hashtag Essop works for the mother Russia. It's because what they did worked. It worked in the Soviet Union at that time. But politically, cue the era of glasnost and perestroika, which effectively dismantled the communist regime and brought democracy to the Iron Bear, and then ended the Cold War. And guess where the Russian sports scientists decided to knowledge share once they'd been given all that democracy? The communist Caribbean island of Cuba. Whereas the Soviet Union had around about 293 million test subjects to choose from, there were pretty slim pickings population-wise on the island of Cuba, which only had around about 11 million, but the scientists had to make do with what they had. By 1995, 4 years and 1 Olympic cycle after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the Cubans were on the march. Ivan Pedroso was ruling the world in long jump with 8 meters and 71. Javier Sotomayor was second in the world in the high jump. And 2 Cubans were in the top 5 in triple jump in the World Championships in Sweden that year. But being fair, nobody was going to touch Johnny there.
Here's Jonathan in the first round. Oh, it's huge, it's massive!
But a country with 11 million people producing a spread across the plyometric jumps like that beats the odds, no? Now the next year, total plyometric domination had to be put on hold, because the one place you can't go around jumping for joy with communist techniques is America. And they had themselves some little shindig called the Atlanta Olympics. Uncle Sam borrowed a line from Ivan Drago in Rocky IV and told the Cubans, "You will lose," and then proceeded to try to beat the creed out of the communists. It was a freedom fest, with the US leaping to the challenge and sweeping up gold in the long triple and high, while the Cuban team so strangely underperformed. All except for Yoelby Quesada, who snagged himself a bronze in the triple jump. But 3 times the jumps, you can't hype that kind of plyometrics. It's going to spring out. I mean, come on. For the Cubans, it was like going to your arch enemy's house for a meal, and now if you so much as scuff the carpet, you're going to end up in a red wedding. This might just all be coincidence, and here, of course, I'm inventing a narrative here, but it just seems to me to be a little bit surprising that the next year in the World Championships in Athens, suddenly the Cubans are back on top of the world with a clean sweep and dominating anything and everything to do with plyometrics. So taking all that into account, when you take the same strategies and you give it to some small Caribbean island with a population of about 6, and they end up with a vast medal haul in the jumps, I'd say the Russians are doing something right. So what do the Russians do? The first thing is that they differentiate between explosive plyometrics and reactive plyometrics. Explosive plyometrics are exercises and movements that start with no movement and try to produce movement as quickly as possible with a tiny, fast counter movement. This is great for things like Olympic weightlifting or like the block starts. You're motionless, and then you're motionful. The rate and amplitude of that force curve is the sign of your explosiveness. Basically, you've got to produce a lot of force in a hurry. Reactive plyometrics are exercises and movements that have you in motion already, and you are resisting and exploding off that motion. So think sprinting in for a header in soccer or taking off the board in long jump. You're in motion, but then you rapidly change vector. Basically, you've got to control the force and then rebound it. These two plyometric disciplines have different levels of performance, like difficulty levels in a computer game. So, here are some examples of level 1 explosive and reactive plyometrics for knee and ankle flexion. Explosive plyometrics would be short-range vertical jumps. Reactive plyometrics would be skipping. As you progress to level 2, you're going to look at stiff leg box jumps and Prellsprung. You master that, and then you can move to level 3. For example, weighted short-range vertical jumps or depth jumps, 2 foot, 1 foot, and or with resistance, or just increasing the drop. Then you just do any movement that you want and just apply the formula. Let's take a look at the push pattern. Level 1 explosive might be off the floor push-ups from knees. Level 2 explosive might be off the floor push-ups from feet. And level 3 explosive might be clapper off the floor push-ups. On the reactive side, level 1 reactive is maybe pump the floor push-ups. Level 2 reactive is box push-ups. And level 3 reactive might be drop push-ups. And that's the key to this. Just decide which pattern you want to plyometricize, and then decide whether you want it to be explosive or reactive, and then just gradually over the time ratchet up the intensity. And you do that by just manipulating factors like range of motion, height and weight, but ensuring that you keep exactly the same setup as you did at the beginning. That probably all seems fairly simple and obvious. Here's the problem. Explosive plyometric training has that tiny counter movement. Like you prime the cord, but you can't prime the cord in the real event. You're going to be behind everybody else if you're doing some sort of tiny counter movement before you're coming out of the blocks. If you just yank it on the clean bar, it's going to mess up the smooth acceleration of the bar path. So while it helps explosiveness, it's not directly transferable into the patterning. And if you're doing reactive plyo, then as you're increasing the height, the resistance, or removing feet, then you're always running the risk of increasing the amortization period, which is the time your foot spends on the floor, which means it ceases to be reactive. So basically, plyometrics punishes the person that does it to show off and rewards the person that is exacting, precise, and methodical about it. But it's not even that simple. I mean, take a look at something like this. This guy's doing box jumps with 140 kilos. Half of me says, what an idiot, being dangerous with weights and plyo. And 50% of me says, that's what you got to do to keep pushing the boundaries. Good looking out. And the problem is that will work until it doesn't. And to be fair to the guy, he has excellent biomechanics and control. I mean, he may well be working at the correct percentage of his max, and it just so happens that his max is just really high. On the other hand, he may just be some jackass and needs to make sure he's got full health coverage. I guess time will tell. And just so you know, sprinting is a level 2 reactive plyometric movement. Level 3 will be bounding, and level 1 will be something like the quick feet drill. And that, by the way, is what drills are. They're low-level, segmented plyometric parts of the sprinting action that you're doing to try to warm up the nervous system so that you can then elicit a better performance when you sprint. So if you can't connect the drill that you do to any part of the sprinting action that you actually have, then save your steam, because all you're doing is just neurally hampering your sprinting. I hope this helps. There's probably going to be a part 3 to this plyometric stuff, but in the meantime, bust me a thumbs up, because let me tell you something. Busting makes me feel good. Happy to say in the comments, babe, and ring the ding-a-ling, because as you can see, I'm not able to do these videos every week at the moment. So now, you'll know when they come out. But if you like my vibe, please subscribe.